Okay, so like I said, this is called the I'd Rather Be project. And you can see what I've done here is I've taken a picture of myself. And I also have a picture of a beach in the Dominican Republic here. One thing that you can know about Photoshop is that the tabs all rip off. And I know a lot of you have a little bit of Photoshop experience, so you'll have to bear with me because I'm going to teach this like nobody's ever touched it before. So anyway, I have these things and I can flip back and forth. But to make things a little bit easier, I can rip these tabs off. And I think that's a little bit easier. And everything in Photoshop has a tab that can rip off. So like for instance, also up here you can see I can change my work area. Right now I'm in motion. I want to go ahead and open up Essentials. And all of these tabs can be ripped off and repositioned. And you can open and close different windows. If you have certain things that you use and certain things that you don't, open them and close them, and then you can go ahead and actually create a new workspace to design it exactly how you like it. Now you'd probably do that on your home one instead of your one here, but I could call that the Susan layout. And then I can flip back and forth, and the Susan layout is right there. Go to painting, go back to Susan, and it changes my layout. So that just the tools that I need are available. So you can even make a layout if you have one just for like photo editing as opposed to digital painting. I hate it when it does that. You can change your layout to have just the tools you need. Okay, so over here, this is where the real oomph, all the work of Photoshop is done. This is my toolbar. And if I lay my mouse over there, I get the titles of the tools. So if I am referring to a tool and you're not quite sure what it is I'm talking about, you have your mouse hints here. Additionally, whenever you see this little triangle in the corner, that means that if you hold down your left mouse button, you have additional tools. So if I talk about a tool and you're not sure what it is, you kind of go to the tool that's similar in theory to the tool I'm talking about, hold down the mouse button, it's probably hidden under that particular tool. So like all of the lasso tools are right here, one under the other. All of my different paintbrush tools and drawing tools are under the paintbrush. So you can change things around that way. Then as I change my tools, like here's my paintbrush, up here across the top, those are the properties of that tool. So I can see right now, can you see the little dot that is my cursor? Right now my cursor is only 13 pixels and this picture is pretty huge. So I could go up. Now my pixels, it's big. This is how soft or hard my paintbrush is. You can see the harder edges here and the soft edges. All your different brushes. So really, watch what happens as I change my tool. The properties across the top change because they deal just specifically with the tool. Additionally, as I go through this software, I'm going to use several speed keys. And I will use some speed keys that I kind of want you to memorize. Many of which you probably already have memorized, like Control C is copy. Control V, paste. Control Z, undo, right. Left bracket, right bracket, increase and decrease. What I mean by that is here, watch my paintbrush or my cursor. I'm going to hit my brackets, and it controls the size of my paintbrush. Or really anything that has a size, like, you know, my eraser. Oh, that's a paintbrush. I was on the eraser. But those are the big speed keys, really, for Adobe Photoshop. Probably also Control T is transform. I use that one a lot. Besides that, I will use the menus a lot because I think it's a little bit less confusing to students. But know that there are speed keys in here, and if you want to learn them, fine. Also know that I'm choosing to not use them on purpose because a lot of times students that use Photoshop a lot get kind of indignant if I'm not using speed keys. But if I'm doing a demonstration in class and I'm always just saying, okay, and then you hit Control whatever, and I lose a lot of students that don't have the level of familiarity. So you can learn your own speed keys for use, but the basic ones for me that you do need to memorize are Control C, Control V, Control Z, left bracket, did I say C? C, V, Z, left bracket, right bracket, Control T for transform. If you can get those 5 speed keys down, you're doing pretty good. After that, anything else that you're going to use constantly, you probably want to get the speed keys. Or you can actually even create your own speed key combinations if it's something you do all the time. Okay. And then the other area to pay attention to is across here, the menus. So for instance, if you have something where I talk about, okay, you need to get into the history window, well, that would be here in the windows. Filters, this has just all kinds of stuff you can get in and play with. We'll look here at the edit, so we'll use the transform menu and probably the image adjustment, image size, rotation. So all of that stuff's kind of hidden up here in the menus, but just kind of flip through and look through at what's in there. And they're pretty straightforward, I think. Lots of cool tools to play with in there, and that's a lot of meat and potatoes in there. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to look at my images here. Let's talk about how to do this project. Okay, where am I going to put myself, do you think? In the yellow chair. I took this picture, and I want you to get a situation for yourself, and then actually pose yourself in a way that you will be able to put yourself in the chair, in the chair, or in the situation. So you have to find the situation first. Also notice that my image size here, my base image size is really large. I'm not using a thumbnail or something like that. Your final output, and I can see my image size here if I go image size. Right now this is 1600 or 1600. It's really, really big. I will probably have you shrink it when you save so you can actually change your image size later. But right now, I can work in it large. It's always better to work in a larger image and then shrink down as you go. I can also see that I have a scaling difference here. Right now, this is a JPEG format, and we'll talk about formats more, but that's a typical photography format. This is at 66% in RGB, 8-bit. This is at 50%. So this picture is going to be way bigger than this one when I bring it over. But let's take a look at it. It's not going to be so big that I'm not going to be able to see myself. Sometimes if you have like your image of yourself that you bring in is really huge, you may actually want to go in and adjust your image size down first. Like make sure you constrain your proportions. Then you could take this down to, I don't know, let's take this down to 1,000. Save that. Now I'm going to be more scaled. Usually you don't have to do that because I could actually scale myself once I bring myself over, but if there is a huge difference in your image sizes, you may want to adjust your image sizes before you start this whole process. I'm going to hit Control Z, which is my undo. Okay, so I want to select myself here so I can copy myself and move myself over there. And the best selection tools, I think, are probably stashed here, either under the lasso. I could use a magnetic lasso and trace around myself. It is always better to have too much than too little when you are doing a selection. The trick here, I've finished. A lot of times people start dragging this thing all over. Sometimes it releases when you let go. Sometimes you have to double click to release it. So if you're like dragging it all over and you're making these marching ants, which we call the dotted lines all over the place, it's probably because you need to double click. But you can see here that I'm going to use my magnifying glass. I've left out my hands, so I can go into my lasso tool. Watch what happens when I hold down the Shift key, I get plus. When I hold down the Alt key, I get a minus. Right now I want a plus because I want to add my hands. Like I said, it's always better to have too much than too little because I can go back in and eraser, but I can't go back in and rebuild my nose. So hold down the Shift key, add. Okay. So that is one way, Control minus here. That is one way to select myself. Gonna hit, here's another speed key that you can know. Whenever you have marching ants, if you try to use any other tool, it's not gonna work. Well, it just did there, but, oops. See, I did that in more than one piece, so I have to go into my history. Undo only works for one move back. So I have to go into my history and delete that. The other tools I could use to select myself, I could use a quick selection tool, which is right below the lasso. This is pretty snazzy. I just drag it over myself. You have a little less control than you do with the regular magnetic lasso. See, I got extra things in there, but that's a really speedy, quick way to do that. I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. See, I lost it. I'll go back to my other one. Okay, so anyway, I used one of these tools to select myself. Now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to hit Control C to copy. If you don't want to use the speed keys, they're going to be up here in Edit, Copy. Now I just click over here and I paste. I'm obviously too big, right? So I can hit the speed key of T, which would give me free transform, but I'm going to go in here and I want to just scale. Holding down my Shift key as I scale to keep myself height and weight proportionate. If only that was so easy in real life. There we go. That's more or less the right size, so I get it like that, and I hit Enter. And there. Now I can move myself. Now I can zoom in with my magnifying glass. Take my eraser tool. I'm going to shave off part of my arm there too because that's a little chubby. I think the thigh's got to go too. Again, if only life was so easy. There we go. Okay. Obviously, I'm not lined up perfectly with the chair. So those of you who've used Photoshop before, what's the best way? What do you think I should do?
Erase a little bit of the layer so you get more of the chair.
Oh, I could do that. Or skew. Skew or warp, I think. I could do that, but I'd probably shave off a lot of myself. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to Edit, Transform, and I could either skew, which is kind of a uniform thing, or warp. I'm going to choose warp. One thing we have to talk about here, which I have to make sure I have the right layer selected when I do that. Notice here when I pasted myself in, I created a new layer, so I have the Me layer, which I can name my layer, which you should always name your layers. It's very handy. There's Me. But I can shut myself on and off here. I'm going to go ahead and I am going to warp Me, making sure I have the right layer selected. So now I can just take sections move myself around to get myself in the chair. Hit the Enter key. Yay. Now what do I need to do? What's wrong with this chair picture?
Well, you need to go
yeah.
You need to go in front of the background, or like you need to blow the layer down.
Yeah, I need to move the arm in front of myself, right? So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to do that with the Layers panel over here and click this. Hit New Layer. I'll call this Chair Arm. Now I need to go, the chair arm exists, the chair arm in question that I need exists back here on the background layer. So I need to actually click it from here, select that layer. I can actually turn this layer off so I don't see myself. And now I can go ahead and use the same methodology that I used to move myself over. The quick selection tool, for instance. I'm going to get a smaller brush because that one's too big, and I can use my brackets for that. I'm going to go ahead. Again, if I have too much, doesn't matter. Though that's way too much. That's excessively too much. Okay, that's more or less okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just Control Copy, Control C that, making sure I'm on the correct layer, Control C. Click up here to the chair arm layer and paste. Turn myself back on, and now I have that chair. To get rid of the extra chair in here, I could do a couple different things. I could use my eraser tool, which right now is way too big. So I'm going to use my eraser. Use my brackets to make it smaller. And I can go in and erase the extra. Another thing I may choose to do, depending on the complexity, I don't require you to use a mask, but a mask is another viable option here. I can hit, with that chair arm selected, I just hit the masking thing down here, and now I have a white. To hide sections, I'm just going to click this down here. I have black and white. Get my paintbrush. Whoa, it's huge. And I can just paint with black. And as I paint with black, the things that are black will show through, and the things that are white are hidden. The benefit of using something like a mask is that it's non-destructive. If I use an eraser, I erase that section and it's gone forever. I can't ever go back in and say, oh my gosh, I erased my nose, what am I going to do? If I use a mask, like see here, like, oh my gosh, I made a big mistake. All I have to do is reverse my brush, get a white paintbrush, and paint back over. So masking shows what is going to show and what's going to be hidden. And you have a lot of control over it when you use masking. I think I have too much, not enough butt there. Let's see, there it is. There's my butt. Okay, so anyway, hit Control minus and Control plus are also good speed keys to know. So there, now I have myself, I'd rather be at a beach in the Dominican Republic. Things that you may want to do, right here my lighting matches pretty well the lighting at the beach. If I wanted to adjust my lighting, I could go in here. I'm going to create myself as a smart object. And then I can adjust. Actually, these are all grayed out because it wants me to double click this and do this somewhere else. I'm going to do an adjustment layer. Brightness and contrast. So I wanted to do that, and I just go ahead and save that, and it changes that layer. That's the non-destructive way to do this. Yeah? Did somebody have a hand up? I thought I saw. The other way I could do this, kind of the old-fashioned way I could do this, is if it's not a smart layer, I can go in and I can just do my edit adjustments right here, brightness and contrast. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. I messed with the arm there. Cancel. Go here. Image, brightness and contrast. And it does it real time. The problem with doing it that way, that's probably the quick and dirty way to do it. The problem with doing it that way in the long run is that I've destroyed that layer. Once I save it, I can never go back to the way that it was before. It's just toast. So the smart objects are just non-destructive. You can always save it. I could go back and remove that adjustment layer at a different point in time. It's kind of handy. I'm not grading on that for this particular project. I'm just showing you these, so I am showing you the proper way to do things. But if you want to do the quick and dirty ways for this particular project, go ahead. Okay, once I have myself in here, I can do things like add shadows if I want to. I can add a big bottle of champagne next to me. I could add Brendan Fraser with me on the beach. So it's not just putting yourself necessarily in a situation, it's also bringing things with you. What do you want to have with you in this situation? If you're at home in bed, you want a bottle of wine on the bedside table, a good book on your lap. I mean, what do you want there? Keep it clean, all I ask, because you will be showing it to the class and explaining yourself. So think about that as you put together something. But that is really, do we have any questions on this? Really, do you all have a very clear idea? Oh, the other thing that I want you to make sure that you do when you're doing this is you will do what I call documenting images. If you look at the rubric, I want all of your images that you make to be documented. And the format that you'll use that, like I would say Dominican Beach, so I know which one you're looking at. I spelled that wrong. It always helps if you spell right. Dominican Beach, something like that. Okay. Then you would just say if the author, if the photographer is available on there, retrieve the date that you retrieved it. And then here you're going to put the URL. And that is the way you document where an image comes from. So for this particular project, I don't care if you use copyrighted images because they're never going to go anywhere except for in this class. If you do want to use something you're going to use outside of this class, don't use anything that's copyrighted from somewhere else. But the fun thing about this is being able to go into the Dom Perignon website and grab an image. Whatever you want to do. So just go crazy with that. But you do need to document. And when you sit up here in class, I will ask you, okay, I'm going to ask you about everything that's on the rubric, and I'll ask you, okay, show me your documentation for your images. And that is the whole project. Make sense? Okay.